Hello guys and welcome to the channel. So what have we got in front of us here? Yes, the avatar figures. Well, the ones on the right and the left are from the first wave and the one in the middle is from the second wave. But before I start with these figures, I'm going to come over to this section here. And these figures were released by Todd McFarlane, and I like to collect my boxes, keep my boxes because I love the artwork. And down there you will see the films that I have so far, and I recently watched those films and now I've got a taste to watch the third installment of Avatar. I think it's Fire and Ice, or maybe that's wrong. But anyway, let's get back to these figures. Now, I'm a guy who bides his time, and when these first came out at £25, I waited long enough to get the first two at the front at half price. And the one at the back, he was £11.99, so I'm well pleased. And what I love about these figures is they've got them pretty accurate in terms of the look and how you see them in the movies. And that figure there is Neytiri from the first Avatar film, and that's played by an actress called Zoe Saldana, I think it is, Saldana, I'm not sure. But she appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy and the recent Star Trek movies starring Chris Pine. And I love this figure. So if we come over on the other side, we will see Jake Sully, kind of the central character in those films. Played by Sam Worthington. You may have seen him in Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans. And every film I watch, I tend to try and get something related to it, mainly the figures. And that guy there, I'm not sure of the actor's name, but he's called Tonawari. So we've got Jake Sully, Tonawari, and Neytiri. Now I'm going to pose these guys out a little bit. These are the present poses I have them in the display, and what I wanted to show you is that they're so articulate and the joints are so tight you can get that effect of them standing on one leg, and I like to create movement, so hopefully that's the illusion you're getting on camera, as you can see in the feet section. And if I come up, I'm going to pause it and just change the direction so you can see a bit more of their profiles. So we're back in the room, and there they are in a different dynamic, slightly different from what you just seen. And come to Jake Sully and Tonawari at the back there. If I come in on his foot section, he's even got articulation in his toes. So what do I say about these figures? Now, when I was a kid, I was blown away by Gene Roddenberry's interpretation of the Star Trek world and thought that was never going to get beaten. But of course, along came Star Wars, and that was a world that I love to this day. And I've posed out some figures from Star Wars, and I've going to pose out some more if I get that Jango Fett, which has been delayed again. But at the end of the day, let's get into the posing of these figures and see what we can come up with. So I've changed their direction, and I've put both the feet on the platform of the two front figures. And there's Jake Sully. And we come on to Neytiri and Tonawari. Now Tonawari, I'll come in really close on him. I love that look. It's kind of a Maori look. But what I realised about that film, Avatar, well, all of them, is kind of a parallel to our own history concerning Native American Indians, where Europeans started coming to America seeking fortune, gold, silver, land, and the Apache, the Cheyenne, the Lakota, they all had devastating effects on their culture when Europeans tried to take their land from them, which has similar parallels to the Avatar characters. And obviously, if you know a bit about the Old West, General Custer, who's kind of portrayed in a heroic light, did a lot of damage. But if you actually read the accounts of what he did, he wasn't a particularly nice guy. He would do things like go into Native American camps while the warriors were away, and he didn't like to waste bullets, so we'd use the cutlasses or swords that the cavalry had and kill the women and children, or the old warriors or young children. So in the end, all the nations of the American tribes got together and put an end to him at the Battle of Little Bighorn. But that's enough politics. Let's get back to these guys. And I haven't really liked anything since Star Wars in terms of the new worlds and life forms you would see in that franchise. Then along came Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's movies, and I became a huge fan. I haven't got any figures by that franchise, but I am on the hunt. But with James Cameron, who made Terminator, things like Aliens and Titanic, I think he took time out from making films and he went into a specialized sub and went into the ocean, the deepest parts of the ocean, and photographed and filmed the seabed and used that to create the world of Pandora, on which this film Avatar is based. So I'm going to change the pose out and see what we can come up with. So we'll go to Jake Sully first, and what I've done is I changed the dynamic slightly as though he's looking down after his first kill on Pandora. And Neytiri, I've changed her pose slightly, angled her differently. What I like about these figures as well is that the tails can be manipulated to add to the dynamic. And let's go close to Tonawari because that is a good sculpt as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, and what Todd McFarlane did when he released his figures, because anything you see in that film, Avatar, he made. And with one of the things he did with these figures, he created the dynamic of if you shine a black light on them and then turn off the lights in your room, they glow. I haven't done that yet, I don't have that facility, but I also was after the flying beasts that appear in the film. Now, the beasts that Jake Sully and Neytiri fly are called banshees, and they were about 50 and 60 pounds when they came out. But this guy, Tonawari, he flies a beast similar to the banshee called Skimwing, and his tribe, well, they're all called the Na'vi. The people on that planet are called a Na'vi. He's the Na'vi of the sea, and all his culture is based around the sea, and they have the ability to breathe underwater. Unlike the forest Na'vi, which Jake Sully comes from, and Neytiri, there are other Na'vi out there that live on the deserts, the mountains, and other areas on the planet. So let's pose them out again and see if we can get a better dynamic on these figures. So, as I always like to do, I pose them a lot, these guys. I always get them on the one knee. I think I'm going to finish with the dynamic where they're on both knees, so I'll leave that till last, but this is what you're looking at the moment. Coming close. Not bad. And what I've done with Neytiri, I've taken the dagger from its position and put it in her hand. Let's get a close-up on her. Very good likeness of the character from the film. That's what I like about it. Same with that guy, Sam Worthington. As I said before, I think he was making his name in films like Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans, and then I didn't see him for a while, and then all of a sudden he's made it super big in Avatar. And let's come back to Tonawari, because I really do like that guy, especially when you get him for $11.99. You can't complain at that. But the recent wave is now gone up to 35, and then after the character, I'm after the character portrayed by Stephen Lang, who was the villain in the first film and in the second film, but I'm going to play the waiting game. So let's see if we can get another pose, and pause this now. So here's another pose for you guys. Sort of twisted the bodies at the waist, put Natiri at the front, changed out the dynamic for Tonawari. Let's get down a bit lower. That's not too bad. That's a better angle. Come across to Jake Sully. I've turned him at the waist, and I've also fiddled about with all of their tails. Let's get another close up on him. Another good likeness to the movie. And raised his bow above his head. Let's pull back and see that effect. I quite like that dynamic. Might try one more before I get them on both knees. Let's see what we can come up with. Don't mind this one actually. Change the position of the figures. Move Tonawari to the centre. I've put his lance pointing down, changed his blade position. And I quite like that effect. Now come in close and bring it around. Now, I like to have heads tilting down on occasion because it adds to the personality of the figure. And as I've always said, if you try and pose things and try things out, I think it lists the qualities of a figure that you wouldn't say was high end, but I'm not knocking Todd Farlings for that, because as I said on record, I think what he did was change the whole toy market and give us figures that were of good quality at decent prices, and especially if you wait long enough and they drop in price. And Jake Sully, I've changed his bow position and his dagger position. So this is straight on. And you see on the front of his chest, that's where he puts his knife. And then we come over to Natiri. I've got her with the knife above her head. I've angled the bow and arrow differently. You can see that bow, which is moulded in with the arrow, but I would have liked, that's my only criticism, to have a separate arrow so you can create her firing the weapon. And the same for Jake Sully, he's got the similar setup with the arrow moulded to the bow. That does happen in the film, that's how they carry their weapons on Pandora. But I'm going to leave that pose now. I think I'm going to show you now the final pose I'm going to have them in when I put them back in my display. So stay tuned. So all the figures now are on both knees. Let's come to Jake Sully first. And although I've got them on both knees, this dynamic isn't necessarily how he's going to look when he goes back in the display. But I didn't want to waste too much time being fiddly with him. So there's the angles of that figure, which I really like. And then we come over to Tonawari. I've raised his lance up and the blade he's got, but he looks pretty good. He's my favourite one out of all the poses. And with Natiri, I notice when you watch the film, she tends to arch her back a lot when she's flying through the air in kill mode. So I'll try to create that with her on her knees. But what I might do is pause it one more time and change the angle slightly and leave it there. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. So this is Tonawari for the last time, and I've put him here for good reason. I'll explain it at the end. But that's his last pose, and I'm actually going to keep that pose. I do like it. Come around to the side. Not bad. But I wanted to end the footage on the two figures you're about to see. One more close up. Really like that, the Maori look. And now we'll finish with the footage with the two figures, the central characters and Avatar. And because they're such a couple, a lovey-dovey couple, I thought that looked more appropriate. They've just been on the hunt, or they might be getting ready to take on the Sky People, but they're side by side, they're loyal to each other. And they have a saying between each other on Pandora. When they find a mate, they say, "I see you." And she says in return, "I see you." And I still like the first one the best because it was such an original thing and we'd never seen that before, that world. But at the end of the day, I was really impressed with the sequel, and I'm looking forward to the third film. I've had a couple of my mates watch it, and they're not really fans of this sort of science fiction movie, but even they said it's awesome. And I've seen both films on the cinema first, but I've got a pretty big TV, so it's still impressive to watch on a big TV. But at the end of the day, I'm going to watch the third one at the cinema, and I think in a couple of months it'll be on DVD anyway, and I might just have a big Avatar day, because those films are about 3 hours long, a bit like the Lord of the Rings. If you're going to watch those films, you might start off in the morning, but you're pretty much going to finish by late afternoon. So on that note, I say thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed some of the poses, giving you some ideas. I do want to get the Stephen Lang villain in that film. I've seen his figure, I quite like it actually. I want the version in which he becomes a Navi, but for now, these are the figures I've got, and I'll say thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.